right, you guys, I'm here with Will Amason. He's a life coach and he does a lot of really other amazing things, energy healings and physical training. And I'm just going to let him explain all the stuff that he does. So Will, tell us what you do here.
Oh, well, thanks for the plug. I appreciate being on your podcast today. So I shifted into life coaching a few years ago. I spent my whole career as a physical fitness trainer and mainly working with groups. I've taught over 30,000 group experiences in my life. So I'm kind of an expert in working with group energy. But what I noticed working with groups is there's always a shift when you work with somebody at the physical level. There's an emotional shift, a mental shift, a spiritual shift. So let me tell you kind of how I got started with this fringe kind of perspective that I had. And it kind of centers around a near-death experience. It's very, very cool. Back in the 80s, it was, and I'm going to date myself here because I don't even know if you were born on this day, Nikki.
I'm born in 82.
Okay, you were 3 years old.
Okay.
So back it up to, it was May 5th, 1985. And I had just moved to Dallas, Texas, and I was driving my car. Yes, I was driving at that time. And, Cinco de Mayo in Texas, right? And so there was a beautiful festival happening here in Reverchon Park in Dallas, where we live. And I was driving down Maple, and the festival caught my eye. And I'm kind of like driving and looking behind me because all of these fancy dresses and anything. Well, if you're familiar with that street, it goes under the Katy Trail, and there is a 4-foot cement wall that divides oncoming traffic. So as I turned my head back around, and I found myself head on with this brick wall, impending doom, about to have a head-on collision. And I'm maybe 10 feet away going about 45 miles an hour, and it's going to happen, right? So I close my eyes and I just prepare for impact. And as I close my eyes, I lose consciousness. I just completely go out. And you've seen on TV, on all the doctor shows and the hospital shows, and they go clear, and they have the paddles, and they put the paddles on your chest, and the patient kind of goes with this thrust upward and comes back in. So what happened to me in the next conscious moment was exactly that. I felt like I had been paddled, and there was this pull of my chest that pulled me up, and I kind of came back in. And it was a shock to my system. It's like I got shocked back into life. So when I woke up, I was completely fine. I wasn't in the hospital. I had not been paddled by doctors. I was actually parked in my car, which was untouched, a block down the road, and it was inside of a little niche. My car was in park, and it was on, and I just thrusted. So here I am, about to have a head-on collision. I black out right before I'm about to end my life, and there's this time lag. I have this big explosion, and I'm teleported down the streets. My car is completely fine, and I have this fog of what just happened. I thought my last conscious moment was I was about to have a head-on collision. My next moment is I'm completely fine and a little disoriented, and like something major just happened, and I don't know what it is with this confusion. So that's kind of what started me on the path to figure out what just happened. What happened there? So as I kind of fast forward, I got involved in all different types of things. And one of the first things that kind of came across my path was something called the Silva method of mind development. And it teaches you what creative visualization is, basically, and how to creatively visualize. In this particular technique, you listen to a little, it was a tape, it was a cassette tape actually back then. And
like
you listen
binaural beats, or what is it?
Well, it wasn't even binaural beats yet. It was just a rhythmic pattern. And it set up a brainwave frequency to put you in the alpha brainwave frequency right at 10 cycles per second. And the technique taught you to bring 3 fingers together And if you're familiar with Pavlov and the dogs, like when they rang the bell, the dogs would salivate. It's a conditioned response. And so in the Silva training, the conditioned response was when you bring your 3 fingers together, it triggers your brain to automatically go to 10 cycles per second to go into the alpha brainwave frequency. And that was their technique. So you could be in a meeting at work or in an argument or wherever you are, and all of a sudden bring your 3 fingers together because you've done this training, and it would automatically change your brainwave frequency to 10 cycles per second. So I really learned how to master this. And so I started visualizing things. And I was fresh out of college and I didn't have any clothes at all. I had a navy blue blazer, a red shirt, a red tie, a white shirt, and some khaki pants. And that was the extent of my professional wardrobe, right? And I was wearing that every day to work. So I really wanted a new wardrobe. And so I used this technique and I sat down in my chair. It was a Sunday night and it took me about 90 minutes. And I visualized 2 weeks of a wardrobe. Me getting up every day, wearing a suit. There's a black suit, a navy blue suit, a herringbone jacket, black slacks, a white shirt, a blue shirt, a pink shirt, XYZ. I go through specifically 10 days of wardrobe. So the next day I go to work wearing my navy blue jacket and my red shirt, red tie. And I came home from lunch to eat my lunch, and there are 2 hefty bags at my door. And I'm like, that's not trash. And I opened up these hefty bags, and there were freshly pressed shirts and all of these clothes. There was a black suit, there was a navy blue suit, there was a gray suit, there was a herringbone jacket, there was black, there was a blue shirt, every to the T, no more, no less. Exactly what I had visualized the night before was in those 2 bags. And I had this feeling of course it's in the 2 bags. Why wouldn't it be in the 2 bags, right? So, that kind of happened. And
who gave you these?
Well, my friend, Eddie Walker, we were workout buddies at the gym, and he had moved into a new place and he was kind of downsizing. He had all these clothes. He was a little older than I was, but we were the same size. And he just had this thought like, you know what? I was going to donate these, but I bet Will would like these. And he just unconsciously drove over to my house and put them on my front door and said, here you go. So that's kind of how the universe, supplied that. So over the next 90 days, I got a new car, I got a promotion, I started dating somebody I wanted to date. Literally, it was like the magic, this magic thing. And so, but what I noticed was some friends, I tell you what, I was trying to visualize a new car because I wanted a new Mercedes at the time. And I was driving this old beat up Honda. And so I'd gone down and I sat in the showroom with my Mercedes of choice, and nobody wanted to wait on me. That's just a little young guy back then, like he can't afford a Mercedes. And so I took all the brochures and I went home and I did my technique. And so the very next day, I get a letter in the mail that I have won a Mercedes, not that I had won a Ford Mustang or a Lincoln Continental or a BMW. It was the exact car that I had visualized. It was in this letter. And I had some friends that come over and they saw all of these pictures on my refrigerator and around because I'd been visualizing and said, what are you doing here? And I said, oh, I'm visualizing. They're like, you're what? And I said, yeah, I went through this technique and you bring your 3 fingers together and talking about the alpha brainwave frequency, and you kind of get into your zone and you use your third eye and you visualize what you want. You make it as real as possible. And then it happens. And they go, Will, you are full of, you know what, you are crazy as all get out.
So you're like vision boarding it before.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But what I learned from that lesson, Nikki, was the car never manifested. And I learned a valuable lesson that you only share your vision, your dreams with like-minded people, because the power that you have to create, other people who worry, who are on your, kind of in your circle, have just as much power to work against you, right? To create some things. And so really what happened with that car is I'd won the car but I had to go out and I had to claim it. And then it kind of got real sketchy, the more that I went into it, then it really never kind of happened. But so just my manifestation just kind of fizzled out. So I learned a valuable lesson, like when you're creative visually uh, visualizing what you want to create, to keep it private or to only share it with like-minded people who can support you in your vision. And that was a really important lesson. But so anyway, that was kind of like the learning how to visualize. The next phase, I went into the Unity Church and Church of Religious Science, learning how to move energy through the spoken word through prayer. Then the next phase, I went into Reiki and energetic healing of learning how to move energy through my hands and through intention.
And you actually
I
still
had
do
this
that,
nice
right?
repertoire of how to move energy. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, learning how to visualize, how to speak it, how to send it through your hands, right? You become a master at working with energy. So a lot of quinky dinky things started to happen to me as I start to, to activate all of these senses within me. And I got called by the Orca whales one time.
From
And
Dallas? Like you were in
yeah,
Dallas when you got called by him? Okay.
I was having my Reiki master initiation, and I had this vision of these, and I see this ocean, and out of this ocean, this big white and black orca whale comes up and it breaches and it does a backflip, back in the water. And then it comes up again, and it's making this spiraling motion, and it's getting further and further away from me, right? Further and further away. And it's headed on the horizon, and cresting on the horizon is this star. And I know it's not the sun because my consciousness said, that's not the sun, that's a star. And I said, oh yeah, what star is this? And my guidance said, that's the star of Sirius. I went, oh, okay. So I'm having this vision of this orca whale spiraling into Sirius. So the next day I get in the mail um, for a workshop to happen in Canada to track the orca whales as Sirius rises. So Sirius in the month of July tends to, you can see it in the horizon right at the sunrise. Mm. And that's a very sacred time with the Syrians. And so I was kind of called on this quest into to travel with the orca whales. So I had never interacted with the orca whales before. So I fly up to Vancouver. I'm by myself. There's 7 of us that have agreed to go on this quest. And so the very first night, we spend the night at the Stanley Park at the Vancouver Museum or aquarium, where they have an orca whale. And we kind of communed with this whale and, kind of said hello and that sort of stuff. And that was kind of cool. And the very next day, we went out on these pontoon boats, and with an outboard motor, and there's 7 of us, and I'm the youngest at the time, and so I'm at the very tip of the boat, and we're kind of out on the ocean, and we spot a little family of whales. And so Elizabeth Fortune was leading us, and she worked with dolphins and whales, and she was from the LA area. And so she said, let's cut the motor, let's just observe. And so I'm kind of sitting there, and this orca whale spots us, and starts coming at us, and the it looks like a shark kind of, right. But the orca whale, so it's kind of freaking you out because here comes this big monstrous whale heading towards our boat. And it kind of came up towards the boat on the side, and then it turned, and it actually, the eyeball came up and it looked at me, right at me, and it locked eyes with me, and I was staring at this orca whale. And we would just have this mind gaze going on for a couple of minutes. And Elizabeth is going, Will, I have never, ever seen a whale behave this way. This is very unique. He's communicating with you. He's giving you a download. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And I didn't feel much at the time. I was just like feeling blessed and feeling loved. And oh my gosh, isn't this a magical moment? So the whale, I guess after a couple of minutes, just turns back in, goes underneath, and then moves back to the family of the whale. And the whales are called the Melchizedeks of the planet, by the way. And they're holders of blueprint information. They're holders of memory and record of things that have happened that humanity has forgotten about. So they have kept the full memory of what's happened on planet Earth. So
do you think that's because there's memory in water and they are more
it's their
connected with it?
species, the species of the whale are connected to Sirius actually, and the Syrians,
Yeah, the dolphins
have,
too. I've heard a lot
yeah,
of people talk about, like, I've had some dolphin interaction and some whale interaction as well, and I do think there is some sort of connection with Sirius. I don't know why, but
yeah,
there is.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's where their home is actually, the cetaceans, that their higher level consciousness. And
Yeah.
what happened within about a minute of the whale going across, my back chakra, right at the base of my skull, my occipital lobe. Now, this is where an energetic healing that you receive telepathic or cosmic kind of information, like downloads. And so, although it wasn't happening in real time with the orca, as the orca went off, it felt like right after he left, like somebody got a knife and was just like had cut open the back of my skull, ripped it open, and it was excruciatingly painful.
Mm.
Then this wave of nausea came over me, and I got immediately sick, and I was like, I've got to get off this boat right now. So we rushed ashore. I like get really sick, and I'm sweating and having some sort of reaction. This energy is just moving through me like major detox. And what happened, that was the birth of my psychic ability. My third eye just like really opened at that time. And for the rest of the trip, I was like super psychic. And so there was definitely a connection with the whales that had created that opening. So on the next few days, we went out on the water and we moved up to a place called Telegraph Hill, which is where they filmed Free Willy. I don't know if you've ever seen or heard of that movie with the orca whales, but there's a whale reserve up off Vancouver Island. And so we're kind of in that Telegraph Cove area. And we had been on this retreat for almost a week now. And I was kind of getting, okay, we've gone out in the water, I've interacted with the whales. And on this particular day, the trees were calling me. And I kind of told the group, I said, hey guys, you guys go out on the boat today, but I'm going to stay here on land. I'm going to venture into the forest. I don't know. The trees are calling me. That's all I can say. And I need to be on ground. And so, they're like, what? And can we go? And, you've been pretty psychic and pretty on this whole week. And, your premonition has been really strong. I think we should all go with you today, Will. And so I'm like, well, okay, whatever. So we have two cars, and I'm a passenger, and Elizabeth, who's leading the thing, she gets in her car, and literally I'm in the front seat. I have never been here before. And I'm like, go down 2 miles, take a right, go left, go down that street. And I was just using my inner vision and my voice was telling me where to go. And I'd never been here. So through just kind of following all of that, we get to this spot, and I'm like, this is it, stop the car. And before I had gone on this trip, I had had another download of vision here in Dallas by kind of a healer, Nasir Ahmed. And he had worked with me, and in that vision, I was in woods. I was in these trees, and there was this hooded watcher that had a black hood over that was just watching. And I was lying down in the forest, and there was a star or a ship or like a UFO or something that was beaming light down towards me, hitting me in the third eye, and there were all these codes that were coming in. So I'm like, okay, so that I remember that vision, right? So all of a sudden, when we stopped the car and we got out, that vision just popped in my head like, I've been here before. this is exactly where that other vision happened. This was where where it happened.
Oh,
And I'm here. And so when I got out, there was this hieroglyphic uh, writing on this wall that had depicted my journey. And there was a spiral and a fish with, you know, the Sirius and the sun rising. And then there were all these codes that were on the rock that I had seen in my vision. That was like, we were supposed to do sacred space there.
were they like petroglyphs?
Yeah, they're like petroglyphs, like etched into the rock.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
how I found this place, I mean, it was just totally trusting my gut, trusting my intuition, my inner guidance. You know, like go here. It was, and it wasn't like I was hearing anything. It was just a feeling like, no, this isn't it. Turn right, go that way, you know, this way. And, you know, we were there within 30 minutes of, you know, when we started. It didn't take that long. So we got out and we did ceremony, and we did drumming and singing, and we did kind of an anchoring there. But that was really cool how I was drawn to that sacred
Space,
side.
yeah.
And that whole hieroglyphic language was on these rocks about the spiral and the fish and these geometric symbols that came out of the UFO. So that was kind of weird.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, maybe you have quite a big connection to the Sirius
Yeah,
planet.
yeah, for sure. And then the next night, we traveled a little further north and checked into a hotel. And I had never had this too, but I couldn't stay in the hotel. I walked into my hotel room, and I'm like, there is very bad energy in this hotel, and there's very bad energy in my room. And I literally, it felt demonic to me, like evil,
Hmm.
demonic. And so I went to the front desk. I said, do you have another room? No. Well, I'm not staying here. Well, we can't give you your money back. You know, you prepaid. And I'm like, fine. And I told the group, I said, I can't stay in this hotel. There's something going on. So I walked down the street to a rest area, and I slept that night on a picnic table. And the sign said, please do not feed the bears.
Wow.
So, you know, so it's just very strange that there was some sort of uh, ritual sacrifice that had been done in that room. And there was a killing that had been done. And it was really very, very, you know, strong feeling that was going on
Right.
within me. And it's just, you know, trusting your gut. And nobody else felt it as strongly as I did. But again, my senses were on overdrive. And come to find out, that land, there had been an Indian massacre on that land where they built that hotel. So it wasn't necessarily maybe in the hotel room
Could have
as
just
much
been the
as it
spot.
was
Yeah.
on that land, that blood stained land had been there, and it was ancient. And I was tapping into that area because everybody's like, you know, what's going on? And we talked to the locals the next day, you know, why, you know, do you know anything about that hotel? Like, oh, well, you know, this used to be sacred land. There was a massacre here. And it was kind of interesting to be able to tap into that. Um,
So
what is it?
is your third eye and stuff always open, or
Well,
how
that's
does?
kind of when it started. You know, it kind of comes in waves. For me, it comes in when I don't focus on it. It's really more powerful. Like when I try to make things happen or focus on it, I'm not as accurate, but I get downloads a lot of information of what I need to know when I need to know it.
Mhm.
But when I work with a client, you know, in my coaching, I'm definitely using my intuitive abilities to tap in and what I sense. And so I have really good sense of yes, no, proceed, you know, positive, negative, you know, like I can ask yes and no questions and get pretty much an accurate
So
uh,
does that
picture.
manifest like as a voice in your head or a
It's a
gut feeling?
feeling. It's a
A gut
feeling.
feeling.
Yeah, it's a feeling.
Okay.
It's kind of like, have you ever been to an amusement park as a kid, right?
Mhm.
Remember the first time you went and you rode a ride and you got your ticket and you're standing in line and you can hardly wait to get on the ride. And, you know, there's always a ticket taker there. And it's like, and they count how many people can ride the ride at one time. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Maybe there's 10 people, right? So they let 10 people on at a time. So my yes, I feel this excitement, like I'm standing in line to ride a ride, and I'm eager, and I'm it's like, that's what I feel like when it's my yes. Like, yes, it's my turn. It's
Right.
proceed, go, find your space. It's going to be fun and exciting. So there's this invitation to move forward, and it kind of has that feeling associated with it. Where my no is more like that disappointment you feel when you're number 11 and those 10 people get to go, and you go, oh, sorry,
Right.
stop. It's not your turn. You can't go yet. And you have that little sense of like, and no, but my turn will come. It's just not right now. Right. And there's a feeling like the ticket counter puts your hand on your chest and says, okay, just wait here. And so there's a pressure. And so that's my no. That's how I know there's kind of like a hand on my chest. It's a no, and a pulling, which is kind of a yes.
That's interesting, because that's kind of how I describe that with my discernment. Like, if I think something's true or not, it's like I actually literally have a physical like pushback or a pull
Yeah.
in my heart chest area, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So like anytime I'm reading something, if I don't like it, I feel my body go like that, versus like, yeah, like I have like a chest opening. So that's interesting that you described it like that. That's really cool.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so if what I'm saying is, if I don't think about, and like if I'm constantly asking questions to my higher self, yes, do I need to do this or do I need to do that? Do I need to do this? Like, am I, like you're at the grocery store, do I need this or do I need this? And if you're constantly asking questions, for me, that diminishes my answer, right? Because I'm not trusting in the flow of life.
Mm-hmm.
So my more is, I'm in the grocery store and I just work intuitively, like, I need that. And I don't ask the question. It's more simply of a knowing, like what supplements I need or need to take or not to take, or put that back. So there was a phase where I started asking, like, okay, is this good for me? You can muscle test, you can really ask. But the more I get into the mental part of that, the less accurate my answers got. And that because it was, my guidance was telling me, you just need to trust the flow and stay in the flow and know that basically.
So you do this quantum belief repatterning thing. So
Yeah.
like, how does that lead into this?
Well, it's tied into some of the work that I do as a Psych K practitioner. And we have a series of beliefs. And what we believe and our belief patterns are really formed by the time that we're 7 years old. You can imagine a lot of your backdrop and your narrative of how you live your life is formed between ages, from birth up to 7 years old. And a lot of your preconceived ideas are kind of set in your unconscious mind. And once they're set there, they just operate. They just, life is hard, life is easy. Parents are helpful, parents are mean, I can't trust them, or, whatever you start to believe starts to kind of play out. The quantum belief patterning is going back and determining what beliefs that were formed early in your life are supportive and non-supportive. And you can narrow things down where there could be one non-supporting belief, which I call the kingpin, that if you can change that one kingpin, that one single belief, you don't need to change anything else, because there's a cascade that unfolds and it repatterns everything else because of that one belief. And so quantum belief pattern is really trying to find that one belief, your biggest limiting belief, that has the biggest payoff for this cascade of changing so many of your other beliefs to align with this new belief pattern. So it doesn't take very long to repattern a belief, but it's a type of whole brain activation, because we tend to be either in our right brain or our left brain. But there's some techniques in Psych K. For instance, one of them that's really profound is when we get to a balance. One of the balances that I use, and we're trying to repattern a belief, is, say I have a client I'm working on, and they have a innate trust of men, right? They just don't trust men. All men are bad. Something happened, in their early life. We're going to find out, and we need to pattern that, because we know that, all men are not bad, but in their belief, we need to change that. So, I do a form of muscle testing and activation, answering questions, and the body is connected to your subconscious mind. So I ask a series of muscle testing questions with my client to kind of pinpoint until we can get down to the belief. And then once they find the belief, like, okay, the core belief is all men are bad, wow, well, we need to change that, because, that's not true. So we want to say, both men and women are loving and supporting, we have a new belief system that we want to have in.
Would you put it in with affirmations?
Well, so one of the balances is this. So you hold half of your brain in your right hand, and you hold the other half in your left hand. Like you are your brain. And so what you do is you focus in on this new belief. Women and men are supportive. All women and all men, or whatever your new belief you want to have happen. Women and men can be loving and supportive. So whatever it is that you want to override that new belief system, and you focus on that. You close your eyes, and what happens? It's very strange. Is that your hands will unconsciously start coming together, and then they stop, and then they start coming together, and they stop, and they finally come together. And once they come, this whole brain, your brain is getting rewired in this whole process, and you're inputting a new belief. You pull your hands into your heart, and you integrate, and you pull in that thought. Well, what happens basically with Psych K is, what you don't know is happening is, I can tell, but the client doesn't know this, but we're on their timeline, because this is their timeline from birth to now. Where in their timeline, because they'll start off and then all of a sudden they'll stop.
Like where the resistance was.
Where the resistance was, or where in their brain, where in their time, their linear time, that happened. And they're re-scripting or rewriting that timeline. And then they move that timeline in. So the timeline is birth to the now moment. And sometimes it's kind of like it moves really fast and then just stops. And a lot of times, if I know it's a current issue, people's hands go all the way in and they stop like right here. And I know that this is up for them now. It's a belief that they're working on, they're struggling with, that's more present or more frequent, So that's an indicator of how and when on the timeline of working with it. But that technique is one in which you actually integrate a new belief or a new thought. That's just one example.
Wow, that's really cool.
Another way that I work with clients is I take them into a guided meditation. And because as we go into the center of the heart has its own brain as well. So this is that quantum belief. The second part of this quantum belief work is, once we do the repatterning of the thought, we do an anchor meditation. So I guide them into the secret space of their heart, and we have dialogue with whoever shows up. And it's usually a child, like the inner child issues usually come up first. And so there's parents that come forward, siblings, something that happened before their age of 7, typically. A teacher figure or whoever implanted that belief. There's some dialogue and some repatterning and some conversation that happens. And then it just kind of escalates, and we bring in people until, there's no need to bring any other people. And it's very healing, very powerful.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It really does. So,
Yeah.
and you've been doing this kind of healing. How long have you been a coach? How long have you been doing this?
Well, I've been working with clients pretty much since the 90s, actually, for, what was that, 30 years? uh, Working with that. My very first part was really working at an energetic level and doing healing work with clients, putting my hands on, channeling energy, getting insight, telling, hey, I'm seeing this. What does this mean? We dialogue and we kind of talk and the symbology. And so learning how to move energy. And that was a big part of what I did early on. And I had some amazing stories of miracle healings, of people that were on the list for a liver transplant. Their liver spontaneously regenerates and they're taken off, through energetic healing. But by the same token, I had a lot of people that passed away that I worked with through the death process. And so I've run the gamut of doing energy work where I realized that I'm not the cure. I'm a facilitator in their healing. And sometimes that healing shows up and manifests as a physical healing. And sometimes they're healing their soul and their belief system, but it's their exit point anyway, but they're taking new wisdom with them,
Yeah.
a newfound awareness. So I'd learned to walk wherever that person is, to kind of be with them in their moment and not to have any judgment. But the more open the client is to receive, the more they're going to get, for sure.
Interesting. I just have this last week I've heard of death doulas. Have you ever heard of that? Like,
Yeah,
so people who
yeah.
walk you through the death process. That is a new one for me. I had never heard about that, but now I know two people who do that. That's what they
Yeah.
do.
I
So
have an amazing story. I sat with my father the night that he passed away, and my father had was a victim of a stroke, a progressive stroke, and by the end of his life, he was incontinent. He was in diapers. He couldn't speak, and he was elderly, couldn't feed himself, and he was in a bad way. Right, just kind of like almost a vegetable. I mean, there was no quality of life. But he had an endearing love for his third wife, which was my stepmother, and her name was Faye. And Faye was very attached to my father and just couldn't bear to live life without him. So in many ways, he stuck around a little longer than he should, for her.
right.
So, I'm with my father, and it was the Sunday night before Thanksgiving. And I'm with him, and I'm holding his hand, and I'm sending him energy and holding space for him. I said, Dad, it's okay to go. You'll probably see some familiar people. Of course, I wasn't seeing what he was seeing. But I said, it's okay to let go. You ready? You have permission to let go, because I don't feel like he had permission. And so I said, this is what I want you to do. I said, I want you to go to Faye, which was his wife, and they had been together for 35 years. And I said, it's time for you to say goodbye to Faye. And I want you to tell her that you love her. You'll see her on the other side, but it's time to say goodbye. Can you do that for me, Dad? And he squeezed my hand, because we had this yes, no kind of thing going on with hand squeeze. So he squeezed my hand like, yes. I said, okay. So just call her up in your heart, see her before you, and just tell her that you love her. But I also want you to say goodbye. And so I kind of let him kind of have this moment. This is 3 a.m. in the morning, by the way, 3 a.m. At 3 a.m., the phone, it was before cell phones were really popular in hospitals, but the phone rang in the hospital room, and I picked it up. And Faye has a private nurse, because she was elderly too, and they lived in this special home. And so the nurse called me and said, Will, how's your dad? And I said, well, he's transitioning. He's crossing over, maybe a couple of hours before he leaves. I said, well, Faye wanted me to call and tell you that he just showed up in the room to say goodbye and that he loved her. Exactly what I just told my dad to do.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. He showed up as a young man. My dad was almost 80 at this time, and she was like 85. So he appeared to her like as a 35-year-old man and said, I love you, and I'll see you on the other side. And it was just such a neat confirmation because I was with my dad. He's crossing over. I tell him to go to Faye, tell her goodbye and loved. And then the phone rings right after that. And Faye said, my dad just came to her, said he loved her, but it was time to say goodbye. He's amazing. Just amazing.
That is crazy. My dad's dad passed away when I was 12.
Yeah.
And when I was, I think I was like 20, between 23 and 25. I can't remember how old I was exactly. I woke up in the middle of the night, and this was like the Christmas story or something, or Christmas Carol. And like there was a man at the bottom of my bed, like my lamp was turned on my bed, and there was a man at the bottom of my bed. And I was like, oh, and it took me a minute. I was startled, but I looked at him and I was like, Grandpa Joe, but it wasn't the Grandpa Joe I knew, because this dude was way younger than, I mean, my grandfather was 70 when he died. He was, white-headed and whatever. This was like a younger looking man. And he was like, sorry, you're the only one that I could get through to. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he came over, touched my hand, and we transported back to the house that I grew up in. He was, okay, come here. There was a built-in like chest of drawers.
Yeah.
Opened one of the drawers, made me bend down, look underneath. There's a paper underneath there. He's like, when next time you go to New Mexico, you need to go to this house. You need to tell the people who live there now that you used to live there. You need to get this piece of paper. You need to give it to your dad. It's like, I was like, so what's it like being dead? Of course, like, I'm a million question person. And he just kind of laughed at me. It's nothing like what you think. And as soon as he touched me, I was back in my room. And no one was around, and the light was still on, but he was gone. And anyway, long story short, there really was a piece of paper. We did go back to that house, like, and tell the owners. It was a scorecard of some game that had been played with my dad and him. Anyway, so I have always kind of thought, what's going on here? What is with the age thing?
I've read many accounts of people having seen people that have crossed over, that are on the other side, and when they come back, their vital self, right? And what's interesting is physiologically, our bodies age till about the age of 28 to 30, that our bodies are maturing, right? We are growing, we're evolving, and we reach our peak, our physical peak, in our late 20s or early 30s. And then we stop maturing
and start declining.
And then we reach the peak, and then we start the aging process. So that peak or that pinnacle is what's called your ideal age. That's how you're meant to look, right? And it's typically that ideal age is the age that people show up, as ghosts or as on the other side, or they come to people in visions, because that's really what their blueprint of their divine blueprint holds, what their image should be. Yeah.
It's really interesting. So, okay. So tell us a little bit about this Mt.Shasta experience that you had that was really cool.
Oh yeah. So,
because that also dealt with some age.
I went to Mt.Shasta in June of 2018 with Magic Bernstein. And I did a one-on-one retreat with him, and he is kind of a modern day shaman. And he does sacred site retreats in Hawaii and in Mt.Shasta, California. If you've never been to Mt.Shasta, and that was my first time, it's a beautiful area in Northern California. I flew into an airport in Oregon. I rented a car and drove south about an hour. And I met Magic. So I had just been called to Mt.Shasta, because Mt.Shasta, the sacred sites are initiation points. And so you have to remember that when your soul is ready for an initiation will happen. It's an energetic leveling up where you kind of lock in a new frequency into your soul, and that is your baseline. It's like you level up somehow. But you have to kind of pass a test. You know, you have to be able to hold a certain frequency to kind of to be open to that. So I kind of considered that I was ready for a growth period and I could feel my life changing. And so I went to Mount Shasta, and magic took me around to several sites around Mount Shasta area. But one of them that I shared with you about was where some shape shifting happened. And so here's this guy, and we're on about halfway up the mountain on Mount Shasta. And we're in this little park, and it's a sacred area. Um, and so he's actually talking to me about yes and no. And he kept saying, "What is your guidance telling you? What is your guidance telling you?" And that was his main thing. What is your guidance telling you? And I really got frustrated with him. And I said, "Magic." And I took him by the shoulders. I said, "Stop saying that." And because he was really trying to get me in tune with trust my guidance over anything else. Even if you need to be able to discern what is your guidance and what is information. You know, like you see something, what's false and what's true. But what is your guidance telling you to do? Because the person next to you, their guidance could be telling you the same thing, or they could, and the person on the other could be telling them something different. So it's follow your own guidance. And that was kind of the theme of this retreat. So anyway, we start this eye gazing thing. He says, "Well, what's your guidance telling you? Look into my eyes. What is your guidance telling you? Look deeply." And so I was looking into his eyes, and we're looking across the picnic table at each other, and I'm looking closely. And I'll be damned. I mean, he just transformed before me into this young version of himself. And I looked at him, and I kind of looked back with my regular vision, and he's normal. And I kind of looked with this other kind of altered vision, and he's young. And he was just kind of had that Mona Lisa smile. You didn't know if he was smiling or puzzled or whatever, but he just kept eye gazing at me. So then I gaze back, and I'm looking right into his pupils. You know, these two men are like staring at each other about 2 feet apart. It's kind of awkward, you know. And so I keep continue to look at him, and then all of a sudden he goes from this young person to this old person. Okay, and then he cycles back to his normal age, and he's about 50. Some of you may think 50 is old, but he was like a 20 version, a 50-year-old, and like an 80-year-old version of himself. And so it kind of like moving back and forth between these ages. This is kind of interesting. And then all of a sudden he changed sexes, and he became a female version. He became very young, very old, and then the female version of his present age. And so that happened for a while. He was a male, then he was a female, he was young, and he was old. And I went, that's cool. And he was relentless with eye gazing. He just like staring at me. We did this for almost, I don't know, it was maybe a good 25 or 30 minutes. No words, just kind of staring. And you kind of get altered in this eye gaze. And then he changed races. He became a black man, and young version, old version. Then he became a black female version of himself. And then he became an Asian version of himself. And he kind of went through all the races. And it was just so interesting to see the oneness of how our soul represents. And I kind of felt like these were either his past lives, or he was representing, or the lesson was that we're all one. We're all one. You know, all you see is the oneness, the myriad of people, young, old, male, female, whatever race. Mm-hmm. And it was just this really powerful experience. And the more I opened up to it, the cycle of change became more and more rapid. It was like change and change and change and change. This was like a kaleidoscope of these different faces that just kept moving. And then, I'm like, I'm kind of like, okay, are we done yet? and he's like still staring at me. You know, I'm like, okay, I get the lesson now. I get the lesson. And then this alien shows up in front of me.
Which kind of alien?
It was kind of like almost like a Pleiadian. It looked more human than not, right? It was more human, but it had more of a narrower chin and bigger eyes and kind of longer hair. And I'm like, okay, you're not from around here, you know. And I have to say, it kind of startled me. You know, I wasn't prepared for that level, and so it kind of morphed. We did a few little alien things, and then I said, hey, I think I'm good for now because I started to feel uncomfortable. And you know, he said, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Okay." Um, and then, so that was kind of a very interesting experience about shape shifting. I said, "Magic." I said, "That was phenomenal. How did you do that?" And he said, "I did nothing. That was all you." And he said, "Yesterday, you would not have been able to see that. But the fact that you've opened up psychically and spiritually, you're able to see someone shape shift. So it's not like anyone can see another person shape shift. You
But
have to
do you
be
think
open to it.
everybody is a shapeshifter, or do you think that only certain people are shapeshifters?
I think that ability to shape shift is kind of like a technique. And I know that in the American Indians that
Yeah,
some
like
of
wolf
their,
walkers or
the wolf walkers and the birds,
skinwalkers.
people can become bird people and they actually shape shift and they can fly around and transform. This wasn't as much as transform as just his face was shape shifting, like his
Mm.
image was shifting, more like an illusion, more like an illusion, more like a mask that he was starting to wear to represent the oneness. And it wasn't necessarily that he turned into a bird or an animal or something that actually transformed and flew off, because that can happen as well. That's some powerful Hopi magic, and that I've read about as well with the Hopis, that they're able to transform. But that happened. So Mount Shasta, I know you want to go.
I do.
It's a sacred site, and so the frequency around that is just ramped up. So say you're functioning at a level 7 and that's a level 10 there, you're going to get raised up at least to a level 8 or level 9 or maybe even a level 10 while you're there, the longer you stay in that energy. And it's really powerful. Um, but it's a place to get connected, and you just intuitively know that you're one with everything, because nature starts responding to you, and the wind, you ask a question and the wind will circle, or it will start to get cold all of a sudden, and it gets warm, and then dragonflies show up. It's like this most mystical, magical place, and you just expect the unexpected. It's really very, very cool. Very cool.
Very cool. I know. I have such high hopes. I'll probably go there and nothing will happen. But I don't know. I have a lot of interesting experiences, a lot of places I go, so I'm not too scared about that. But I'm looking forward to checking that out this year for sure.
So another high energy place. Have you heard about Mount Ida, Arkansas?
Oh, I crystal dig there.
Have you?
Like I go regularly to crystal dig there. It's a lot of the crystals I make a lot of crystals that me and my brother drill through
Uh-huh.
for necklaces and stuff. That's interesting because the guy who we was just with this guy at this mine the other
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago, and he was like, yeah, some of the mountaintops are flat and people talk about seeing UFOs land on them. We were in the middle of the woods in the Ozark national forest. I saw like fairy portal. Like there was these trees that were forming this little arc, and there was a like a ring of mushrooms, like a circle
Uh-huh.
ring of
Uh-huh.
mushrooms. I went up to the portal. I tried to get my nephew to come down there with me, and he's like 13. He was like, no, I'm not.
No,
Yeah, no,
no,
I'm
no,
not going. I'm not about that
no.
life. And I had the distinct feeling that it was like, well, do you want to stay or do you want to go? And I thought like, well, it's I don't want to leave my 13-year-old nephew alone right over there. So I decided not to. So I just stayed on the border of this um portal, but
Mm-hmm.
I talked into the portal and I like introduced myself and I was saying hello, and I felt like there was another dimension that you could have gone through right in that area. So that is interesting that you mentioned that place, because
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's another high energy place that I was visiting. After I left Mount Shasta, I was called directly to Mount Ida
Mm.
to be in that area. And the
basically all of Mount Ida,
Uh-huh.
every single hill you're on, that entire mountain range is all quartz crystal underneath it. It doesn't matter where you would dig. There would be
Yeah.
quartz crystal everywhere there.
It's like one of the largest crystal things. I went on another retreat with a lady that's called Lavendar. Have you heard of
Oh yeah,
Lavendar?
I'm going. I was supposed to go in 2020 to the Starseed Quest.
Yeah, the Starseed
Yeah,
Quest.
but it got canceled. So I supposedly I'm supposed to go in May.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I may be going. We may be going together.
Okay, cool.
That'd be
Yep,
cool.
that would be cool.
Have you
If
had
you
your
want to
chart?
drive up, we could drive up together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you done your chart with her?
Yes, I have. Yeah, like a year and a half ago now, maybe.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Me too. So she's a friend of mine. And so I really enjoy going up to there. But when I came back from Mount Ida and when I came back from Mt.Shasta, I started having these weird experiences. Because, like I said, when you go into these portals, when you go into these energy vortexes, it changes you. It changes you. So I'm back in Dallas and I'm in my home, and I started noticing weird stuff happening. And, you know, and really, in retrospect, what was happening for me is I was shifting timelines. And each timeline, is slightly different than another timeline. And so there's subtle changes. Notice what you notice. Notice what's different. Notice what's different. So I had driven to Mount Ida, and I had this brand new truck, and it was a GMC Denali truck. It was beautiful, and so I drove home, and it was parked in my driveway, and I am at my kitchen sink, and you can look down my driveway, and you can I was looking at my truck, and guys are real partial to cars. But so I was like, I love that truck. It was really pretty. And so all of a sudden I looked at my truck and I'm like, my truck has a different grill than it used to have. And I walked outside and I looked and I felt my truck and I'm like, that's a different truck. That's a different truck than I had before. And I get in, this is the same mileage and that sort of stuff. And so I started to notice that it was my truck, but the grill was slightly different than the other one. And then I started looking at some of my clothes that I was wearing. Like, some of my clothes were there, and some of them, I had new clothes that I'd never seen before. And so I started to pay attention to, when I got back from Mount Ida and Mt.Shasta, that I had shifted timelines.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, I still lived in the same house. I still drove a truck. I still had the same job. But there were the smallest details that were slightly off.
Yep. I just had a podcast with a group of ladies who are talk about timeline edits and like Mandela effect and a bunch of this other stuff. And I contacted them because I have had a lot of duplicating objects. Like, for instance, I have 2 pink Sonicare toothbrushes now, or it'll be like a charger to like an iPad that I will have wrapped in a special tape, and I'll have 2 with the exact special tapes and worn in the exact same way, and then, or I'll have like this obscure eyeliner that I never would have bought, or that I bought one of, but I wouldn't have bought 9 of them, and there are 9 of them in my makeup bag. Or, I mean, the list goes on. I've had so many different crazy things, but I've had the changing of items. In fact, I did this load of laundry. This was probably when I was 31 or two, like, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I had, my underwear was all like coral and pink kind of stuff, right? And I got everything out of the dryer and everything was gray. And the shirts that I had washed it with, everything was gray, or it was black, white, and gray. And it was a color load. I put a color load in and I took out a black, white, and gray load. And I was going like, I don't have gray panties. Like, who just buys gray panties? Like, I don't have gray panties.
Yeah.
Like, no, apparently, yeah, you do. You have like 6 pairs of gray panties now. And I'm like, no, I never, these are not my clothes. Like, this was a green shirt and now it's a gray shirt. And it was crazy. And I still have some of those items, and they're gray, black and white items, but they were not when they went in. And so there is
Yeah.
sometimes and it's not like, okay, well, Nikki, did you put some kind of chemical in the dryer that made everything?
Yes.
No,
Because if you tell somebody else about it, they're like, you're crazy. They don't believe you.
you just
And
must not have paid attention to that grill
yeah,
the
you must,
first time. You're
but
like,
you know,
no.
in your heart of hearts, something's off. It's not right. You know, it's like
Yep.
you have a knowing, and only you know it. It's like something's different. This is weird because I didn't leave my house that way the last time I came in, and
Mm-hmm.
or something's, you know, or I don't know. And then also like people, uh like I would look through my Facebook or Instagram on me. I'm friends with them. When did I become friends with them? And who are they? You know, that sort of stuff. But I did come back with all of these crystals, you know, from Mount Ida. And I don't know if that was a trigger, you know, because I came back with a whole bucket load of crystals and I have them all around my house. If it ramped up the energy in my house or created more of, you know, that resonance around me.
Mm-hmm.
But a profound thing that happened, I was working. It was a Thursday morning, and I was sitting in my living room, and I'm on the phone with a colleague at work, and we're talking about, you know, just mundane work stuff. And we talked maybe about 15 minutes, and I hung up the phone, and I walked from my living room through my dining room into my kitchen. And when I got into my kitchen, I had this wave of, where am I? What day is it? What's happening? And it was almost like I had just entered into that timeline and I was extremely disoriented. It's very similar feeling that I had during that car wreck experience where I, you know, came back into this body and I was very, very disoriented. So I really think that there are times in our lives that we jump timelines, that they're able to, you're able to move from one timeline or trajectory of experiences into another.
What
And
kind of dreamer are you? Do you do a lot of lucid dreaming?
you know, I used to, there's a period where I stopped dreaming, and then I'm dreaming again now. I'm remembering my dreams, but there was a long period where I wasn't remembering my dreams at all. But I remember as a child, I was a very active dreamer, and I remember actually levitating, you know, or floating, or being able to fly, you know, as a child. But yeah, these just crossing timelines. It's just kind of crazy. The crazy experiences that are happening with us.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, people have different theories on what it means, or if it's like things are happening or not. But yeah, no, I definitely and I would like to. I wish people would start taking note of the dates that these kind of weird things happen. Because, for instance, this other lady I talked to, she was saying that there's a lot of solar paranormal things that are happening in conjunction with what she thinks are timeline shifts or timeline edits, and or even like times of eclipses and stuff like that. In 2018, I went to the full solar eclipse or maybe it was 2019. Anyway, I missed the one 3 years ago in
2017.
2017. I missed that one because my
August.
niece was born during the eclipse. The eclipse was happening when she was born, and I had to be with my other little niece watching her while her sister was being born, and it was this whole thing. So I didn't get to go. I was going to go actually see the direct path, and I didn't get to go see it. So the next one was the next summer, and so I went to Chile. I flew down to Chile to go with another friend, and we went to like the Atacama Desert, and we saw the eclipse. And then a day or two after that, we were in the coastal city next to Santiago, and I had a 30-minute deja vu that lasted 30 minutes without stopping.
Wow.
And it got to a point where I it was pointless for me to even tell them about how I'm experiencing this deja vu, because I had already told them about how I'd experienced this deja vu. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm psychic and I know exactly what's going to happen next. No, I had been there. I had done that. I had been with those people, like everything. It was, you know what a deja vu feels like when you just had that moment. You've been there. This was the longest one I'd ever experienced, and it was uncomfortable. Like I was like,
Yeah.
I had the thought like, shit, what if this doesn't end? What if
Yeah.
I just, am always reliving this Groundhog Day sort of thing? And
Uh-huh.
and it finally did, but I still haven't been able to really experience. I don't know anybody else who's had one that was that
That
long.
long. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of, but I feel like it had something to do with timeline editing. Like there was
Uh-huh.
some like, and I'm not talking about Nikki's timeline. I'm talking about maybe a global timeline shift.
Well, we have been shifting timelines, since 2012. I mean, pretty regularly.
Yeah.
And I do know that things for me sped up after that eclipse in August of 2017.
Yeah, that was a
Uh,
major shift.
it was a major shift, and things just kind of got ramped up. You need to everybody take their places. It's the final curtain. Here we come, and everybody, and then the stage is set, and then the curtain opens, and here we are. I don't know much about the timelines other than just that I've experienced timeline shifts myself. They feel very disorienting, and when they're happening, and then there are the after like something's different because you notice something's different in your house, your surroundings, what you own. Like you said, your chargers are different, they're taped, you have two of them, two Sonicare toothbrushes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like something's off. um so I keep thinking about um this time, like, how many more timeline shifts are there? Are we on the final one?
Right. Okay, so so you do numerology. What's your how'd that come about?
Yeah, so I had an experience with a friend of mine. His name's Peter, and Peter and I have one of those. Do you remember the film The Witches of Eastwick with Cher and
Oh, and
Susan Sarandon, and who else was in it?
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Michelle Pfeiffer, yeah, with
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson. Okay, so they're just three ordinary ladies, and this guy comes to town, and all of a sudden they discover that when the three of them are together, they're able to create stuff, right? Like they would start laughing and things would float, or they would say things and things would happen, but it only happened when they were together, right?
Mhm.
Like their magic kind of got activated by coming together. And so I met this guy back in the late 90s. His name's Peter. And so, very interesting, we would get together and just crazy stuff would happen. It would just happen. It was really weird. And like I'm saying, we would go to a restaurant and all the lights would go out, like blackout. And it was mainly electrical things, like things would overload, the air conditioning would stop working. You would go here, or light bulbs would flash, or it was just random stuff, or like the doorbell would get stuck and it just start ringing and nobody's out there, and just, like just weird energetic stuff. And so, and we were friends, and so he was a numerologist, and I was doing Reiki. And so we started this trade agreement. And so I did my first Reiki treatment on him. And it was very casual. We were just kind of being friends. He says, well, tell me about your Reiki. And it wasn't like he booked me as a client for a session. I said, well, just sit down here and I'm going to put my hands on your head. And, and I think I was sitting on his sofa and he's sitting down there, and I put my hands on his head, and just, I'm starting to channel the energy. And I hate to say this, but he had a spontaneous sexual orgasm, just like boom, like right there.
Wow.
And he got up and he said, what did you do to me? And I said, I just didn't do anything to you, And so, like I said, he and I had some, and still do, some sort of weird connection that we haven't really figured out. So, the way that it happened was I was being called to Hawaii. Like I told you earlier about Mt.Shasta, but I'm like, I'm going to Maui. I'm going to Hawaii. I'm going to Hawaii.
Right.
And so this is like June. My birthday is June 8th. And so I think, I had my birthday. I'm kind of in this new energy. And I'm like, I'm going to Hawaii. I'm going to Hawaii. I'm going to go to Hawaii. And my friend Jerry said, Will, I have a friend of mine. I think you guys should meet. And I said, okay. And he said, he's kind of weird like you are. And I said, what's his name? He says, his name's Peter. So we were all members of the same health club. And so we happened to be there that one day. And Peter was there. And Jerry came up to me and said, hey, I want to introduce you to Peter. So he said, Will, this is Peter. Peter, this is Will. And I said, y'all should talk because y'all are into the same stuff. And so we had a brief conversation. And Peter said, well, Will, I'd really like to get to know you. Maybe we can go to dinner or go have coffee or connect, but it has to be when I get back. And I said, oh, yeah, where are you going? He goes, I'm going to Hawaii. and, and I said, I have a better idea. Why don't I go to Hawaii with you? And he looked at me kind of strange. And I said, I kid you not, Hawaii is calling me. When are you going? He said, I'm leaving Saturday. And I said, I think I'm supposed to be on this trip with you. And he's like, he just met me, right? He just met me.
Right.
And I'm telling him that I'm going on this trip to Hawaii with him. Well, sure enough, we had some dialogue. And by that Saturday, I had booked an airline ticket. He got, he was staying in this condo. I got a similar condo. We stayed in separate places. And so we took this trip to Hawaii together. And I'm just totally moving on faith, just, like follow my guidance. I'm supposed to meet this guy. I need to be in Hawaii. So on the trip over, he teaches me introduction to numerology, all about the numbers and what they mean and how to do charts and this sort of stuff. So kind of had this private lesson from him because he was actually, he's older than I am, and he had done charts for several of the president's wives, like Nancy Reagan at the time.
Okay, yeah.
Was a client of his back in the 80s. And
I know she had an astrologer like on permanent.
She was really open to all that. And so she had done that. She'd also done several people because he lived in Hollywood at the time and was doing lots of charts for celebrities as well. And so he had a pretty big name about him. I didn't know any of this at the time. It was just Peter. And so he's teaching me about all this. So we end up in Hawaii. And like I said, strange things started to happen. So we go down to McKenna Beach, where the volcano, the Haleakala crater, sacred creator, all the lava rock goes down into the ocean.
You're in Oahu.
Black rock. No, I'm in Maui.
Oh, you're in Maui. Okay.
Maui. And so there are all these little, like the ocean comes up through these volcanic rock, and there's like these blowholes and things like this. So we were dancing and had our iPods on and kind of like moving around. Well, up comes this dolphin, these pod of dolphins, and they're like playing with us, right? So they follow us all around the island the whole time that we're there, the whole week that we're there. Our little groupies with the dolphins. So they're like really attracted to our playful energy and get together. And, of course, in Maui, there are rainbows everywhere. This is like rainbow and another rainbow and another rainbow and another rainbow and another rainbow. And so, so at night we would go out and we were staying, and we went to the Wailea Resort for a cocktail or something. And it was next to our condos. And we walk out onto the turf, and it's a full moon. And I remember we're looking up at the full moon, and we're going, isn't that a beautiful full moon? And all of a sudden, as we look down, they were not there before, I would say 10,000 frogs show up, and they're all looking up at the moon croaking. they were there one moment and they weren't, I mean, they weren't there. And then all of a sudden they were there. And it was like, where do these frogs come from? He goes, Will, I don't know. They just kind of appeared out of nowhere. So apparently Lavendar, you know, has a story with the frogs too, that the frogs have some sort of significant connection to certain dimensional energy. So that was kind of a very interesting experience there. Anyway, so Peter and I, like I said, we would get in the car and we would drive down the street, and street lights were blowing out as we would just go down the street, one after another after another. Mm-hmm. And we would go into places and just blow out the air conditioner. The lights would go out, and our electrical energy between the two of us was just very, very powerful. And he said he's never experienced that with anybody else. And I, you know, to be honest, I haven't experienced it to that degree with anybody else except him. But he's the one that taught me numerology. And so I've been doing numerology charts for, gosh, 20 years now. And it's really a pretty powerful thing. I use it every day, interviewing, talking to people, you know, like it just comes in really, really handy.
Okay. See, I mean, I interviewed a numerologist 2 days ago, I think, and he was talking about how, you know, you can find your life path, your personality, like he has a thing too about like the age you are right now is really impactful for how this year is going to go for you. But how do you use it on a daily basis? Because he was saying it's more personal than astrology.
Well, okay, so what is your birthday?
June 14th, 1980.
Really? We're both Geminis.
Oh, cool.
I'm June 8th. So 6/14.
6/14/82 or 1982.
1982. All right, so let's look at your personal year. So your last birthday was June 14th of 2020. All right. Mm-hmm. So if you take a 2020, that year, last year was a 4-year. Your day, the 14th, is a 5, and your month is a 6 of June. All right. So if you add the 6 plus the 5 is 11, plus the 4 is you're in a 15/6, what's called a personal year. So every birthday, every day, every year on June the 14th, you go to the next year. You go to the next personal year. So you're what's in the 6th year right now. And the universal year of 2021 is a 5-year. So we're in a 5-year of what's going on in our external events, but personally, you're going into a 6-year. So you're experiencing it from a 6-year. So you're always a year ahead of the universal.
Of the universal year. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. So in a 6 personal year, what's up for you is your path of service, how you serve. What is it that you feel your purpose is, and how you show up in the world? What is meaningful to you, and how do you express your talents, your gifts? All of this is in relationship to other people, because 6 is the way that we serve. But to be able to serve, someone has to be able to receive, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a relationship with people that are to receive your gifts, and how you set up what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what are your boundaries, what are you going to look at? So this is really the theme of a 6 year, is setting up your path of service, and looking at what's meaningful in your life and how that affects your passion, your purpose, your sense of service. And those would be probably the 3 key things of a 6 personal year.
And how do you use that within, because I mean, a lot of the numerology is doing your name, right? Like putting your name into numbers.
Yeah. So your birthday, all right, you can't change your birthday, right? Right. Your birthday is really built around your lesson, you know, what your lesson is in life and what you came here to learn as a soul. So in 1982, that's a 10, and a 10 is a 20. So that's you're a 21/3 destiny number. All right, so 1982, 1 plus 9 is 10, plus 8 is 18, plus 2 is 20. Uh-huh. So that's a 20 year or 2. And then your 6 and your 14 is 6 plus 5 plus 2. Oh, you're 13-4. Yeah, so 11, 13. So your birthday equals a 13. Do you know that?
Oh, so like when you add the 6 and the 14 and the 1982, that
Yeah.
all together is
Mhm.
going to equal 13. So it's a
Digits
4.
down to a 13-4.
Okay.
So this is what you're learning how to do. You're learning the power. So your base number is a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You're going to be one of those numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a 13-4. There's a 22-4. There is a 31-4. And each of these sequences means something different. What version of a 4 are you? So at a base level, your lesson is a 4, but your version of the 4 is a 13.
13-4. Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. So it depends on how high you. Yeah.
Yeah. But the 13-4s are based on, so I have one in my name, are transformational energies, right? Because 4s work with structure. You have four legs on a table. It adds balance and stability. It's your foundational energy. Well, your foundation is built on transformation, right? So what you're here to learn and what to experience in the purpose of it is establishing new stability through death, through transformation, through transfiguration, through what's different, what's changing, what needs to change in order for it to be stable, right? Because the 13 represents the death process or the evolution of consciousness, the snake shedding its skin, going from one phase to the other. It's that turning of cycles, that Pluto energy of death and destruction. And a lot of times, like Pluto with the 13, once it transforms, it never goes back to what it was prior. It forces you to move forward into the next cycle. So there's no going back. You have to adapt to change. So with this 13 has that type of Pluto energy with it. So you have this element of forced change. Life is forcing you to evolve and change. Where's your stability? What can I count on? What makes sense? Where's the science behind this? Where does all this fit together? You're doing a podcast right now on the fringe, but you're trying to make sense of it all. You're trying to find the threads. You said earlier, like, I want people to relate to the dates that are in. So I want to find the facts. I want to pull this together and pull all the threads. That's that 4 energy, trying to find the systematic relationship of how change works. Right? We're going through timeline changes. We're going through an ascension process. We're going through an evolutionary time in our world. All this fascinates you from the 13 because that's what the 13 is, this revolutionary change. But where do we land? What is the new foundation? How do we find our place with this? Who's going to sign the new constitution, right?
Right.
What are the elements going to be? That's going to be the 4, but it's this revolutionary change that happened 200 years ago in 1776. Same sort of energy. It was a revolutionary constitution that set a new proclamation of how we're going to live. So that's a great example of the 13-4 of trying to find stability through that series of change. So this is something that your soul has come to learn through your birthday. So, what's you go by Nikki, right? So
that's my birth name too.
Okay, so your very first vibration is the Nikki, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I was just going to look at that, really, first vibration that hits me is that of the N, right? So that sound, that vibration brings chameleon energy, change energy, fluidity, the ability to adapt. So the very first consonant in your name is an N vibration, which is a 5 vibration, which means you have the ability to adapt to any situation, to become that chameleon energy to fit in, right? Your strategy is to assimilate. Where am I? I need to fit in, incognito, here I am, right? But your first vowel is an I, all right? So then you go to an I. Well, the I's like I'm Will, we got the same first initial. We're both very intuitive. We feel what's happening. We intuit what's happening. We have an inner guide and inner sense, and that is our Geiger counter. It's not what we read or what we see or whatever. It's more about a feeling nature that guides us. And so we're very intuitive, right? So then you got your K, um, which one? J, K is really, the K is the 11. So you've got this energy of the KK, which is the 1111 in your name.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, you've got this 1111 energy, and 11s have the ability to speak to the general public. They have a message, they have something to say. So you're going to use your voice podcast here to be able to communicate what you have to say. And usually when there are two consonants next together, that brings an added amount of fortune for you, that you're really good at it. Well, there's two Ks, the 1111. So that you're very...
you have that too with Will.
Yeah, I have the double L. I have
Yeah.
the double L. So the double L kind of brings a little bit more luck and a little bit more of a fortunate energy to it. But, just the N, very flexible. The I is very intuitive. This K, KK is something that you have something to say, something to communicate, and it puts you again in relationship with other people, because that 11 is the 2, and to be able to teach, you need a student, right? You need an audience. You need somebody to listen to what you have to say, and then you finish off with an I again. So it kind of brings in that double dose of intuition there. And that's your first vibration and how you represent yourself. Does any of that fit?
Yeah, it does actually. That's pretty spot on. I think I think I was named well, or maybe I'm your name. I don't know.
Well, what's interesting is you and I have a lot of the same energy, and W is the N. N, E, and W are all 5 vibrations. So I have to do the same thing that you do, that I have to adapt, with the W is a 5, that I is the intuitive. I show up with a double L, which brings the luck, but I have another I because it's really William. I have an A and an M. But the L is the 12th letter of the alphabet, right? And so the double L is 3, is creativity, is the 3 energy. So where you have more of the teaching and something to say, I'm always unscripted. I don't know what's going to happen. And I've taught, like I said, 30,000 classes to groups earlier, as a fitness instructor. Did I have a plan before I went in? No, I shot from the hip. And it's being able to be in the moment and to create in the spot, to bring in what's needed for that moment and just be in the flow, be in the creative flow. So that double L gives me that ability to just create in the moment and not have to rehearse or have a script or whatever, but to stay in flow.
It's interesting because it makes you think, like, it's really important what you name your child. Like, you should really know a little bit of this before you just...
Yeah. So the name that you name your child, usually the mother kind of resonates to it. The mother knows, and there are no accidents. And, but if you look at your entire name, if you take all of the vowels and you add up all the vowels in your name, and I usually put that on top of your name and I add up all the vowels, that is your heart's desire. That is your inner soul's connection, what's called your heart's desires. And now if you take all the consonants out of your name and you put them on the bottom and you add up all the consonants in your name, that has to do with your outer shell, your personality, what other people see, how other people perceive you, is that personality number. And then when you put your soul and your personality together and you get your total vibration of your name, that's really what's called your destiny or your essence. And that gives you really your overall qualities, your gifts, what you're meant to do. Has a lot to do with things that you brought with you, your strengths, what you're really good at. That comes from your name. Your birthday has to do more with destiny from what you're here to learn,
Right.
what you're here to gather, what your mission is, that sort of thing. So it's kind of interesting to look at your numerology that way.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And the birthday in some ways that's not anybody else's given to you, like your name, or that's not I mean, that's just what it is.
Yeah, yeah. And the day that you're born, two people can be born on the same day, right?
Yeah.
And have similar things to learn, but their names are different, right? So they have a different expression of how they carry out how they're going to learn that lesson.
Right.
So it's a little bit different. You get that with twins a lot, or people that are born at the same time but have different names.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say like identical twins. Like, what do you do with
Yeah,
that?
yeah. But their names are going to separate them and how they walk through their life.
Very cool.
Uh-huh.
All right, well, this was awesome. This was really fun. It's really cool to get to know you better.
Yeah, likewise. I enjoyed our chat. So thank you for inviting me to your podcast. I have to invite you to mine when I start mine.
You need to start one.
Yeah, right.